maintenance of the Casco Bay Bridge. So with that in mind, I'll hand the floor over to you.
All right, first, thank you for letting me be the first one in the safety session. So, today was going to be tight, it was always going to be tight, and so I've not necessarily rearranging things, but my first event got done a little sooner than I thought, so I was able to get here. But as the chairman said, and thank you very much, that I do need to be out of here just prior to 2 o'clock, because I do have an event that I have to be at. I'm hosting it. So, but wanted to just sit down and talk to you all and answer any questions you have. I do want to set the record straight on one thing. This is not privatizing. Privatizing means to give up control. All we are doing is contracting out services. I want to let you know that, and I could ask the question, maintenance and operations, because that's what we are talking about. If you're talking about the Department of the Whole, it's thousands of contracts, but maintenance and operations contracts out over 200 services. They have, at any one time, over 200 service contracts for different things. So we do this all the time. And one of the reasons we do it is either expertise. We want to focus on something different to let a contractor who that's their focus do that. So we are always looking at ways to get more done with the resources we have. And I mean the resources, not just funding, but the staff. I have a limited amount of staff that we have at the Department of Transportation. Only so many vacancies, only so many filled. And we only have so much funding. So with that, I just want to let you know that there does not go by a day that myself or one of my core team members are not looking at ways to do things better. To make sure that we can put out a work plan that we just put out on Monday, $2.2 billion, over $2.2 billion, the largest work plan ever. And I can tell you, this group played a huge part in that. Thank you very much. And it basically is looking at the resources that we do to do this. But I can tell you, to make this happen, there is a tremendous amount of work that happens at the Department of Transportation. This book itself, you can go online now. You will all be getting your own personal copy. I didn't have time to get it to you today. But it is very transparent. It pretty much spells out all the things that we do in the Department of Transportation, including the funding that we spend on movable structures. So there has been some question, and I will let you try to set me straight, but this is how I believe we've done things in the past. Typically, at a budget level, when we are here doing the budget, which was a year ago, this committee and us, we work very closely over the period of time, over the 6 months. And then that budget's at a very high level. And I will give you an example. If you were to look at the budget, maintenance and operations is one line, $140-something million. The contracting out of the service on this one bridge, and this is not the only movable structure that we have in the state, but on this one structure, we are talking, that line item is way down in the weeds. It is not even in this book. In this book would be a line item on all the funding we spend on operations on movable structures, all the movable structures we have. So you'd have to even go deeper to get to that one line item. And so typically, when I'm working with a committee, and we do a budget, it's typically, if I'm not eliminating positions, which we are not, if we are eliminating positions, that is usually it's in a budget document and we have a discussion. If we try to add positions, it's in a budget document and we have discussions. If it is something that will be in law or statute, that is under your purview, we have a discussion. If it is substantive rulemaking, we definitely have a discussion. Even minor technical rulemaking, we we had discussions when we were doing stuff like that. So I know there's been some questions, why didn't we come to the committee? I just want to let you know that we make decisions every day through the course of the year on contracting out services. I can tell you that sometimes we have a contracted service and I take it back. And I have our staff do it for one reason or another. Because at that time it makes sense. It's important. I can tell you that these positions, the idea is to do this. These positions are to be repurposed to do things that we truly think are important, not for this one structure, but for the entire system. And as you know, a year from now, a year ago, we did this report, Keeping Our Bridges Safe. We were spending, when the report came out, about $70 million per year. The report came out and said we need to spend $140 million per year. So we had a discussion. I know myself and my chief engineer were here in January, and we did a presentation to you. Well, I can tell you this report is important to the department. We put a lot of effort into it. I can tell you it doesn't sit in a drawer and collect dust. I work with my staff. Part of, in this report, $140 million, 20% of that is to be spent on preservation. That's around $28 million of the $140. So I told my director of maintenance and operations, Dale Dowdy, who a lot of you know, who is very good at what he does. And I said, Dale, you need to be spending around $10 million at least, and even maybe 12, out of your 55 maintenance budget. The capital side just can't take care of it all. And that is your job, is to maintain and operate and preserve these things. And so what it is he's got the funding, but now he needs the people that are specific to bridge preservation. And it's the things like beamings and bearings and joints and minor concrete. And I can tell you, there's been a discussion that, well, we're not saving money. Well, I can tell you, looking at that one structure, and you just compare somebody else doing it, yes, it is a wash. But the fact of the matter, by repurposing these positions, I could spend $200,000 on a bridge preservation and give it an extra 25 years of life. How much is that worth? That is worth a tremendous amount of money. And so if I could do this over multiple structures, which is what this discusses, so that is one of the reasons why we are always looking. I can tell you examples where we took contracted work out and brought it back into maintenance. And I give you an example. Some of you have seen the device, we call it the plug mill. We do PM grant. It's a way we can rehab roads, and not full reconstruction, but not just like capital or paving. We have gotten very good at it. We tried to contract some out. They didn't do as good a job as we did, so in this work plan, we increased it by 5 miles per year. I can tell you, when we contract out services, there's always a reason, and there's always a move to how do we repurpose whatever we were doing. I give you an example, like capital paving. We've been asked to do 600 miles per year. This year is going to be the 7th year, so this is going to be the tell-all year, because we needed this 7-year cycle. After 2016, we're going to have 7 years in. I can tell you 7 years ago, we trucked 100% of the mix, maintenance and operations. Last year, we trucked 0%. We contracted trucking out. Now, the cost, this contract, a little cheaper. This one over here, maybe a little more. This one right here, pretty much even. It was a wash. But what was happening is, my region managers are saying, my trucks are locked up all summer long. I can't do anything. I can't get my ditching done, my pipes done, and we're not going to buy more trucks. So we repurpose those trucks and those people, and that's that staff, and that's what they're doing. So through the summer, they're doing other things. We didn't eliminate positions, we didn't eliminate trucks. We just let the contractor pass tri-axles and live bottoms to do the thing that they do good, and we with our 10-axle trucks with a lot of extra weight on them to do the things that we do good. And so there's always those talks. We're always looking to do better than what we have. I can tell you it's, you know, I'm always focusing on my staff. The people that work at the Department of Transportation are good at what they do. I would never say they are not. They are very good at what they do, and they are special to the department, and they do a great job. And we could not put out a book like this if I did not have that staff. And so, with that said, I'm going to let you ask questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there questions for the Commissioner? Senator Guy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you again, by the way, for helping with the tour.
Yeah.
Several of us, committee members went to the bridge,
Yeah.
saw the bridge open, the whole deal, and I don't know if you arranged the bridge opening, but that chip came through just at the right time, so
Yeah, 9:05.
thank you very much.
Yes.
And I don't want to get into a debate over words, privatization and such, but the concern, obviously, is an out-of-state private company going to operate the bridge. And whether we call that privatization or whether we don't is really not the issue for me. But we know that it's a significant change. The concern, excuse me, the concern centers around how this bridge will operate with different new employees, possibly. When you talked to me on Friday of last week, you said that you were going to try to place these employees elsewhere if they weren't hired by the company. You weren't guaranteeing it, but you were going to try to do that. If in fact this whole process continues on, by the way, has the contract been signed with FDI yet?
No, I don't believe it's signed. They are coming on Tuesday of next week, I believe.
So that the intent is to sign it next week?
Correct. Yeah.
Is there a reason why that would be signed next week as opposed to the week after, or is there some special?
Well, they're going to be here, they're going to get a tour of the bridge. So the intent would be to sign it sometime next week.
Okay.
The intent to award has already been signed.
Okay.
That's typically the first thing you do. Intent to award, they come up. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just want to get that clear. How many bids were submitted? For
We
this?
had just two.
Just two.
Yeah,
And as I understand it, the winning bid was 3.8 million,
correct,
and the next one, and the only other one was 7.1.
correct,
Did they both bid on the exact same specs?
correct.
Two questions. If there's a $3 million, over $3 million difference, and the one that bid 7 million built the bridge,
Correct.
how does one explain that type of a delta between the winning bridge bid and the company that knew more about that bridge than anybody coming in at 7.1?
Correct. I mean, you know, I wouldn't know all the nuances on the reason why Chimbro bid what they bid. Very good company. They did, like you said, they built the bridge. If you were to think about it, and we see a lot of bids, and there's a lot of times bids come in and there'll be 7 bidders, and the range can be $2, $3, $4 million. Paint jobs are one of those that you could have a 10 million and a 15 million. These things happen all the time. Why they happen, I'm not sure, but I can tell you, if I was to, you know, you put some thought to it. One, Chimbro, that's not what they do. They build bridges. They build very large structures. If you were to look at what they do in the state of Maine, they don't build small bridges. And the reason being is because they're a very large company with a very large overhead, unlike a smaller company. This is all they do. It is a company that is very small and overhead. This is what they do. They only operate bridges. Chimbro, they build vertical, they build horizontal, they do all kinds of stuff. Maine alone, they've got 1,500 employees, and I think across the country, you're talking over 4,000. They work in 42 different states. This is not what they do. This is not in their wheelhouse. Yes, they built it, and yes, they helped us. They helped train, told us what buttons to push, when to push. But this is not something that they normally do. Now, what we still use them for is if something major goes wrong with, like, the electrical, that's who we call. And that's what we will continue to call. We call Chimbro, and their electrician who knows this thing inside and out he comes and fixes it. As a matter of fact, if one of the operators sees there's an issue and doesn't know how to fix it, they call him, and the person answers. That does not change. That's why this, when we talk about, it's in a word, contracting or privatization. Privatization, you lose control. We have the roles, the policies and procedures in place for this bridge, the opening of it, the closing of it, all those safety things that are that have been built into it, because there's a lot of things that are built into it for safety, and the way we operate it stay the same. They do not change. They are coming in and they have to follow all our policies, they have to follow all our procedures. For instance, unlike some states operating a bridge like this, they would have one operator. We talked about that years ago, and there's no way we would ever have one operator in that bridge. Because the fact of the matter is you saw it, you've got a person sitting at the panel, there's all kinds of buttons, and sometimes red lights flash, and things are like, whoa, what's going on? And the other person is looking out the window, making sure that there's no pedestrian, there's no car that's in between gates and stuff like that. So they can't change that. They have to follow the same rules that we would follow, because that was part of the RFP. That is part of the procedure. Our supervisor is still in charge of that bridge.
You had said that this is not an emergency transition to hire a company to come in. Earlier, I think you had said that. In other words, it wasn't required to be done in the next month or two. It's kind of something you had planned to do evidently for a while. But it's not an emergency situation to transition this to a private company.
No, it wasn't an emergency. What it is, it takes some time, because one, you've got to develop an RFP that makes sense, that you can get out and get what you want. So it takes some time to develop this stuff. There's a lot of thought that goes into this.
So given that, why, given the discrepancy in the two bids, only two bids, did you think about maybe trying to get a third bid to compare the two, to see what, as a measure?
Oh, you mean put it back out to bid?
Yes.
Well, I think you're going to find that, you don't typically do that unless you think there is something truly wrong. The bid that we got, FDI, met everything, met all the criteria that was in the RFP. Met all the criteria, their safety record, the stuff with OSHA, the Coast Guard, all those things that take place, they met. You don't typically say, we're not going to award because we only got two bids. If you get two bids, and you get a bid that's very close to your engineer's estimate, which it was, slightly under, we typically award. When you put things out to bid a second time, what typically, a lot of times what happens is that people see what's, the funding that's on the table, meaning FDI would see that the next bidder was only $7 million, so they get the bid again, and instead of 3.8, it's 4.5. You know what I'm saying? So you don't typically, because once the book's open, everything's fair game.
Thank you.
Meaning all the information.
So if it wasn't an emergency, you were doing this for long-term benefit.
Correct.
And then you've told me, and I think you said in the press, there's no cost savings here by making this transition. I'm wondering if you combine the fact there's no cost savings, you had a questionable discrepancy in the two bid prices. I mean, it must have made you scratch your head a little bit to know that Chimbro had said almost twice as much as the winning bid. So you put that together with the fact that it's really not saving any money. And if you add to that, the contract includes the working of 10 positions like you have now. I think you would not hoping that would change.
See.
If the contract is including that cost, now you've got to place those 10 someplace else. It starts to add up to, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this to something that's not an emergency? You've established the fact that, these employees are going to be placed, if you can, someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
Vacant positions will then start costing money. You're already paying in the contract for those employee positions. That's part of the contract cost. So, those are the questions that don't add up, Commissioner. Why would you possibly do that?
As I explained, we have this. And it's interesting that we put this report out a year ago, and I got to tell you, I'm I'm a little perplexed that we are talking about this one element of the transportation system. And yet, I need to think of the whole. This report, a very important report, is the whole. And the fact of the matter is, as I said, I can repurpose these positions, and I can save tremendous amounts of money by doing the things that we do very well on the preservation side. And that is the idea. I mean, I can save way more than $3.8 million over the course of time. This right here went out 25 years, or 20 years. And the fact of the matter is this is serious, this is important, and I really, I tell you, you know, I have a lot of movable structures. We have 2,744 bridges. I would much rather be talking about 2,743 bridges than this one bridge. I think we're doing the right thing. I think we're doing the right thing by repurposing positions. This is not a time to come and ask for more positions, I don't believe. When we're talking about, you know, it doesn't save money, they're so close that you've got a company, you know everything about it. You know you're paying them exactly this much money. Now, the cost that we incur, people and everything, yes, we are paying maybe slightly more, maybe right on. But the fact of the matter is, it's very hard for a department as large as ours to really put in all the overhead and all the other costs that a company has to do. So I would say that, yeah, okay, you know, line item, the costs are pretty much like within $1 or so.
One last question.
Senator,
Yes.
I just want a chance to, I know we only have an hour, I just want to get a couple of folks.
question.
All right, one more.
So, I have one question.
Yeah.
So, you saw what happened when this committee and your department and state government administration tried to move 2 custodians around last year. You saw the turmoil that caused. And my question is, you must have known that by potentially displacing 10 employees, bringing in a private company to operate the structure this large, you must have known that that would be of great concern to this committee and to others. So my question is, why wouldn't you have come? This is not your ordinary maintenance contract or subbing out with Shaw Brothers or some other construction company. This is unique and different, and I know you know that, and you saw what happened last year. Why wouldn't you come to the committee and before this and include the committee in these discussions like you're doing today?
Yeah.
Why'd you leave the committee out of the process?
Well, for one, in the past, and we have not repurposed, but I would say eliminate positions. And so whenever we eliminate positions, which is what the custodial thing was, it was the elimination of positions. We definitely have to come to the committee. We can't eliminate a position unless you say we can. The only other time we've ever done that is when we did the cost-cutting measure back in 2010, when we contracted out the maintenance or the custodial of the rest areas in the state. We eliminated those positions. We had to come forward because it was a budget item. This is not the first time. I have done, in my time as commissioner, bigger than this. I guess that's why it's nothing that I can't do outside my, within my purview. And I'll give you an example. It's only 8.5 positions. It's 9 people, one's a half-ton. But anyway, we, in our fleet services, we had 8 or so people that were basically our supply people. That would supply, maintenance would come up, they'd say they needed a part. We contracted out that service. The winning bidder was Napa. So basically, if you were to go to our 66 Industrial Drive and you see all the parts and stuff, people behind the counter, they work for Napa. We repurposed those positions to do other things. And they all of them, 8 or 9, took on a different role. They are no longer behind the counter giving out parts. So it's not like this was the first time we have done it. We've done, much bigger than this. And so I guess, if anything, maybe I learned a lesson, but I would have thought I would have learned it a couple of years ago, and things went very well. And today that's going very well. So, but anyway.
Representative Farron?
Thank you, Commissioner, for coming in today, and this whole thing has taken a life of its own a little bit from that standpoint, and having been, this is my first term, and I'm looking at this contract of $3.8 million, and first of all, in my full-time job, that's what I do is contracting and construction pieces and everything else, and Senator, I can offer to you, those discrepancies happen all the time, and we evaluate them and go through them, and I have faith and confidence in what we're doing, and I think for a committee that has been, one of the things that I really appreciated being appointed to this committee was we talked about the non-piracy piece that plays into this, and how we want to do what's best for the roads and bridges in Maine, and we do a $680 million budget and everything else, and one of my questions to some of the members that have been here is, why are we stuck on a $3.8 or $7 million piece of that budget when there's lots of other things? I mean, I could get down into how do you hire your consultants. I know lots of people that own engineering firms in Maine and equipment and everything else. And I think, Senator, you hit upon the nail a little bit about what the crux of what the issue is. And you can look at by some of the people that are attending here today what the crux of the issue is. And I just want to say, from my standpoint, I can't speak for the committee members, but I think the Department of Transportation has been very transparent with us in sharing the plan, and I appreciate that, and I hope that we can continue on with the bipartisan work from this committee to do what's best for the roads and bridges in the state of Maine.
Representative Powers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Bernhardt, for being here. I have a lot of questions and concerns, and some of them were answered in your statement, and some new questions came up. But I've been over the Keep Our Bridges Safe report since I heard about this that you referred to, so I want to touch on that. And I also want to touch on this Transportation Committee briefing that you made to us last year. As far as Keeping Our Bridges Safe report, you said that report is the whole, and that's what you use. If that report is the whole, and privatization or contracting something like this was part of the process, and I would assume that we would have had some kind of sightline that was coming when this Keeping Our Bridges Safe report came out, I wonder why that wouldn't be included in part of that, because I think that's an important element. This is one of the busiest, most important bridges in the state, and so that's one question. But then I want to move to another question, and it touches on the RFP process, and it touches on prioritization that is in one of the reports that you gave us. And in the RFP, the bidder's safety record is 5%, is weighted at 5% of the importance in bidding the contract. But your prioritization is safety is the #1 issue. And this company has some safety issues. There are like OSHA violations, and there have been serious accidents. So I have some grave concerns with that. I don't think 5% weighting is fair in that process. And the second bullet point in the prioritization is municipal and public buy-in. And while this may be, I think you referred to it, a line item way down in the budget book, it's still an important line item. So, and the safety is such a big part of it. So those are my major concerns at this point.
Okay, so the first one is that the report came out before any of these other decisions were made. So the report comes out. I don't know what it's going to say. I've got a team of engineers, very good at what they do, putting this together. They spend a year doing it. The report comes out. I'm like, this is serious. We need to work on this. I then give it back to my core team, my bureau directors, and say, we need to figure this out. We're only going to get so much more resources. At that time, we were going for an $85 million bond, which we did get, which of course helps. At that time, we were in the throes of trying to put another work plan together. So it's like, the discussion typically will sit around, is like, in a meeting, it's like, out of that 140, Dale, we gave you additional funding, my director, additional funding in the budget than you had the year before. I need that money spent on preservation of bridges. You need to figure this out. And so, of course, as a team, he comes ideas and figures it out. He understands that we're gonna contract some of those preservation out, like major painting jobs and stuff like that, but there are some things we can do internally. He needs the staff to do that. And oh, by the way, Dale, you can't have any more people. So, and that's kind of those are the kind of discussions, but the decision was made after the report was done. There's no, because we didn't know what the report was gonna say until it came out and said what it's gonna say. It would be easy if I just came to you and I said, I need $70 more million, get it for me, or I can't do anything. And I mean, you would say, that is like, I know we cannot do that. And I know that's in, all of us in the same room, rowing in the same direction would be very hard to come up with that kind of funding on an annual basis, that much additional money. So we have to figure this thing out. And within the resources we have, and this was one of those things we felt we could do. Your other question, yes, safety, number one. If you look at our mission, the safest, most reliable transportation system possible given available resources. 5% in any RFP when it comes to safety is probably a high number. It's just, typically when you're putting a RFP together, there's certain criteria, and if you were to look at a lot of different RFPs for a lot of different contracts and stuff, that's typically that area that you're going to hit, 5%. And we are not giving up in any way. If the regular traveling person that drives across that bridge and happened to ever walk inside the bridge yesterday and tomorrow, whatever, walk inside again, or is able to get inside for a tour, the only thing they would see different is the moniker on the jacket. That would be it. It'd be running the same, doing the same thing, the procedures are the same. Safety is truly important, and partnerships with municipalities is super important. I can tell you, one of the reasons why I'm here, and I really pushed my schedule around, because I was in Falmouth today doing a press event with Nathan Poore on an unbelievable partnership. And we did a press event, and I can tell you the questions that I got after in the corner was nothing about that project. And that frustrated me. So I did whatever I could to make sure I could get here. And I can tell you, partnerships are good. We have talked before we released it. Dale and others went and sat down with the city administrators of both Portland and South Portland and discussed it with them. And fire and all that, their main concern is, okay, is it going to operate the same? Because there is policies and procedures in place that they have. Who to call, when to call. Those things are going to stay the same. And we're going to, matter of fact, one of the things we found is that we really probably should update those things. And it hasn't been updated in a few years on how we react, because municipal officials have changed in both cities. So that's one of the things that comes out of something like that, when you're really kind of focusing in on something that you kind of just said, hey, it's just kind of running. So they will continue to be important, and they will continue to be top bullets on anything that I say. So the 5%, I think that is something that is typically normal in RFPs.
Representative Hobart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for coming in. I put a very high value on your time, and I feel a little bit guilty that maybe we're not using it to a good advantage right now. But I have one very brief question, and you are going to reallocate these 8.5 positions?
Yeah, it's 8.5. Right.
Do you know yet where you're gonna reallocate them to?
Well, one thing, it's a discussion with them. What do they want to do? I mean, there's rules that we have to follow under the contract. I can't just place them somewhere, there has to be a discussion. Some of them, we'll probably want to work for FDI. So, this is only secondhand, but I think one of them already has signed a contract.
So to follow up on that, for instance, the Napa people, those people that then now they're either driving trucks or changing tires or working in the shop, is that correct?
Correct.
So this will be the same idea, right?
Same idea.
So if some people take a job for FDI, then you'll be hiring somebody else to take their place and work on.
You will have that position, it will be vacant, and you will fill that. What you have to do is you take the position and you move things around, because right now it's a bridge tender or whatever, and it becomes a transportation worker or whatever else that you want to do. You might have to take some funding away, you might have to put some funding in, but there's a process for that.
And they may be taking a position that right now is out to contract.
Correct. I mean, we're always looking at, I can tell you, we take away and we give it. I mean, it's just the way we do, but I don't sit at my desk and.
Thank you.
Representative Golden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming today, Mr. Commissioner. And I just want to assure everyone on the committee and Commissioner and all the public, this certainly isn't a partisan issue. And, this is, I think from our discussion in the budget, Mr. Commissioner, with issues of contracting out, I'm always, have a healthy skepticism and just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I think I shared with you that I have a pretty, a background working in contracting in the freight forwarding industry and doing contracting with the government, and I have an understanding about how, sometimes bids can come in looking like they're savings or even, cost neutral, and often, unfortunately, can result in additional unexpected costs that turn into cost overruns. And, working on the Homeland Security Governmental Affairs Committee, the GAC side of that committee is always looking at government contracting and making sure we have good transparency in government. I just have a few different questions in talking about the NAPA contract and also with the recent contracting out of the custodian services, which I'm sure we don't have any numbers back. But I do wonder how many services, if do you currently have contracted out, and how many of them have resulted in cost overruns?
Like I said, I think last year there was 204 in maintenance and operations contracted out services. So, in savings, some of them we've been contracting out forever, so you're not going to have a savings. But I would say we have a very good record when we contract anything out that it is within that 3% plus or minus. And matter of fact, we are developing performance measures that I would be able to present to you on any types of contracts, what it is at award of a contract and what it is at some point in time. So that is a performance measure that we will have on what is that percentage, because we need to look at that all the time. Whether it's a construction contract, how much did that overrun or underrun? I can tell you in our dashboard, which is available to me, I can get into those weeds if I want to, and sometimes I do. But I tell you, we have a very good track record at the Department of Transportation on making sure that our contracts are true and that there's not. You can't overrun on a contract without. You have to have a conversation with them again, and you have to have an estimate, and the stuff has to go back through the system, and people have to sign at a high level on what is happening. Why is this contract that was only $100,000 now you need another 20?
Absolutely, and that's
so those things are in place at the department.
In looking at the two bids and the discrepancy, that was just one of the first flags for me. Is this is a pretty big discrepancy? Is there is there a possibility that, there's just room for, a loss in savings or cost overruns? And just, I think
This
it's
type
important
of,
for the
this type of
committee.
contract would be very difficult to do that because it's on a, this is 3.8 over 5 years. So you divide that by 5, that's what they're gonna get. And I'm not sure exactly how the payment is broken down,
Yeah.
but it's like a plow contract. They, somebody says they'll do it for $4,000, this, whatever it is. That's what they get.
Right.
They
But
don't,
if
a
they run
bad
out of
winter,
money,
a good winter, that's the type of contract. I mean, it's,
if they do run out of money, certainly we wouldn't be in a position to say, sorry, that's the contract. I mean, we would be in a position of, this bridge must operate. So,
well, yes, but remember too that they have, this isn't their only bridge, they have 50. It's a fairly large company when it comes to movable structures, so they gotta have cash flow.
I also wanted to ask you just a few things about the process in general for bidding and contracting. Back in November when I first heard about this issue and had made phone calls to members of the committee asking about it and putting in inquiries, I had received word that there really wasn't a need to continue looking into the issue, that an RFP had been put out and that the department wasn't initially scoring any of the bids that came in very well, and that therefore a contract likely wouldn't materialize. And so I was very caught off guard when an announcement came that there had been an intent to enter into a contract signed, and it made, I guess I was curious, were there amendments made to any bids, or did anyone?
No.
No.
The 3.8 or whatever that number was, is it? We took our time only because we wanted to check. This is something different. We hadn't done this type of RFP, so we just took our time. We took our 30 days that we normally have. We have, and that's not the first time on any contract that we've taken our time, right up to the time when it's in the agreement that we have 30 days to say yes. If not, then they can come back and say, well, it costs us now, or they don't have to enter into the agreement if they don't want to. So, but we took our full 30 days. So, staff check.
Yeah, just in terms of when you put out your bids and you want to contract out a service, are there any levels where, if it's over X amount of dollars, that you have to seek some kind of outside legal counsel outside of the Department of Transportation? And if that's the case here, did you seek outside legal counsel before entering into the contract from anyone outside of DOT?
No, I have legal counsel. I'm one of the few departments that have, and their expertise is in, and the reason we have that is because of contracting. Because that's what we do. I mean, we contract every day. We're contracting something. So we have the expertise. We have the expertise in-house. I would never contract that out. The expertise in-house to do just that is to make sure that, and I mean, if you were to look at any DOT contract, I mean, it is always in favor of the state. I can tell you. If you've ever done one with us, there's a lot of opt-out. We can, we definitely hold the power and hold the wheel the hammer. So if anything is to happen, we can get out of it.
So you don't have to go through procurement or DAFs or anyone?
Not on these types, no. There's certain contracts that we do that have to go through procurement, DAS, but a lot of the contracting that we do does not. It basically, the Napa one did. It was, we worked and combined to put that one out because it was materials and stuff which they do. But there's some that do and some that don't. But it's all in statute and how the rules are worked. So
I will just say, really quickly that I do think this is really important. I know that the budget, flies at a pretty high level, and it was one of the observations I made is I wish that we were getting more into the weeds when we look over the department's budget. It's a big budget. There's a lot of money. It's nothing personal at all to DOT. I think you do great work. I just think we have a responsibility to get a little more detailed in how we look at things. And I do think this is the kind of proposal that we should look at. And just, I wonder if it isn't time, for some kind of mechanism to make sure that there is that kind of outside review of bigger contracts when we're talking about millions of dollars and big pieces of state transportation infrastructure. I just feel strongly that there should be some kind of mechanism to make sure that we're, at least giving it a review before these kinds of decisions are made.
Commissioner, I think, this represents, for me, most of all, this represents a significant policy shift. We talked a lot about custodians last year, and for me, if there's anything that falls under the purview of the DOT, it's the maintenance and operations of one of the most critical bridges in Maine. So for me, this is an issue of safety, and you had said that the bridge hasn't been toured yet, and so my question, the company hasn't toured this bridge, is that correct?
They're coming on Tuesday, I believe.
So they haven't even taken a look at the bridge. I mean, what is the safety record of this company? Are they familiar with operating in cold weather? I understand it's a Florida bridge company, it doesn't get cold too often down there. Certainly not like it does here. What is the safety record of the company, and how can we be assured that this bridge is going to operate in a safe and efficient manner like it has?
Well, like anything, we look at their safety record, we look at their OSHA, and they met our criteria, so they're going to put in what they need to put in and what is asked for. So they do, they have bridges up the East Coast, they're not just in Florida. They do 50 of these bridges. Yes, this bridge is in cold weather, but it's also built for cold weather. So it is a unique structure. It has a lot of, I got to tell you, the safety is not always in the person pushing the button. The safety is in the structure itself, how it was designed, the protocols that are put in place. This thing has so many mechanisms that just about every time you push that button, there's some other light that goes on because something is saying, well, this might not be quite right. It's because it's a huge structure. So the fact of the matter is this company knows how to do that. They have hundreds and hundreds of employees that's what they do. They do a lot of training. That was part of the package. And if you were to check, that is in place. I can tell you it's more difficult for us as a department to train 8 people on one item than it is if I focus on another subject like bridge preservation and I have hundreds. We send them through trainings all the time on respirator fit, painting, concrete, cure, all these things that we do, and that's what our focus is. And I got to tell you, I don't know that we were doing enough training for this staff. And they do move around. I mean, it's not been the same staff all the time. So we brought in people, we've taken people out, and so, but we have supervisors in place that know how to run that bridge. And the training itself for FDI would be well over a month. So them to even start operating the bridge wouldn't be until the end of February, beginning of March, I believe is the time frame.
I know we're running low on time. I know there are a couple other questions. Representative Bryant, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for coming. I know that your schedule is tight. Most of my concerns have been at least aired, and that's so I can process them, and I think you and all of us appreciate that. I think it's more personal to me because one of the constituents is being displaced or affected by this. Biggest flag for me in the beginning was to see it was an out-of-state organization, not having any input, any discussion on it, threw a flag to me. But I wanted to say that the biggest thing is I do have a constituent here in concern, and I want to make sure we represent them well.
Representative Burrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for coming. Just a clarification on the number of positions currently at I've heard 11, 10?
8.5.
8.5. And do you have any idea as to how many will be operating the bridge?
At this time, no. So their staff will be going through negotiations, and FDI will be coming in and having discussions with those employees. So I do not know at this point in time where they are or where they will be. So some of them have already called FBI, as far as I know, what I've been told.
What is that, Morgan?
Just very briefly, thank you, Commissioner, for coming here. But Commissioner, I'm assuming that you agree that we've got a healthy relationship with this committee over the years. And we've spent a lot of hours developing budgets and that kind of work. And as you've heard from others, and I do agree, and it's not a question, it's an observation, that we've done all this work together, yet when it comes time to something like this, displacing people, whether you agree with that or not, you choose not to bring in the committee. It's a little bit, not unnerving, but it's, I don't even want to say it's insulting, but it's different. And that's kind of where I am. I think it's along the lines of the Senator Diamond.
Representative Powers.
Thank you again, Mr. Commissioner. I just want to go back to the safety issues, and you talked about the importance of the Keeping Our Bridge Safe report and the importance of that conversation that we had, that truly to keep them as safe as we would want, we would have to double the amount of public funds, go from 70 million to 140 million, I believe, that we would need for true safety. And, when you talk about that, much of that is the public's money, and I don't think there's public buy-in to this, and I think that your trip to Falmouth indicated that there's questions about it. So I'm not comfortable at all with, with this contract and the fact that it's happening, and Representative Hogan's comments that this committee wasn't included in because of those other conversations, because we've had so many in-depth conversations about that. And I'm still really uncomfortable with this safety issue. You say that sometimes the safety isn't just the pushing of the button. It was in one tragic instance, the person pushing the button, where the safety was, the critical issue. So I would really hope that we could slow this process down. I don't know what that means, but I really don't think it's the right thing at this time from my standpoint on this committee.
Are there other questions for the Commissioner? I know he has to leave shortly in minutes. Any other questions?
Just have a quick one.
Senator.
Commissioner, again, thanks for coming. Are you, based on what Representative Powers just said, are you willing to hold off on signing the contract till, just in case there are other questions? I do have to say, I've got more emails, texts on this issue than on anything else during this session. And I think there's a lot of concern. Would you be willing to hold off on that signing?
I think we're committed in doing this, so I would say most likely not. We'll see when they come on what we have a discussion with them, but I think we're going to stay the course. I can tell you I've learned some lessons, but here today, and but we're going to stay the course. I know that we are not always going to agree on everything, and I mean that happens in any session. I would just hope that this one thing does not get in the way of the great things I think we can all do the rest of this session. So with that said, I think we're going to continue to move down this path. I can tell you I would not have done this if I did not think it was the right thing to do. So.
Any further questions before we finish today? No? Okay. Commissioner, I know you're very busy, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And I know that we'll be seeing you in the coming weeks.
Correct. I'll be here on the 19th.
Thank you.